You know what it's like to live in a Roman prison? No, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like chained to a wall. Have your ankle chained to a wall so you can't go more than just a few feet away without somebody coming in to unchain you. You don't know what it's like to sit there in the dark, day after day, hardly able to move. The food they give you is irregular, and when you get it, it's slop. And you find yourself listening in the dark for bugs that you might be able to catch and eat to supplement what you get. Every day you're hungry. Every day you sit there and wait for something to change. And the chain, the shackle around your ankle, it chafes, it bumps. Every time you move, it moves just a little bit. Just enough to scrape away some skin. And after a few days, you've got a wound, and after a few more days, you've got an infection. And you sit there in the dark knowing that your ankle is starting to seep blood, starting to seep pus, starting to smell. There's nothing you can do about it. You can rub at it with a straw a little bit. That doesn't really help. Might even make it worse. And you sit there day after day in conditions like that, knowing that it's not going to end well, and eventually you're just wishing that it would end. I was imprisoned in Jerusalem, in the Roman fortress. The official charge was being a rebel, because I had been part of an insurrection. I was also charged with murder because they say I killed a Roman. I'm not admitting to it. That's what they say. I didn't really have a trial. They just rounded up a bunch of us that they knew were not content with Roman rule, and they had an officer walk down the line to see which of us he recognized. When he got to me, he stopped. He stared at me for a little bit, and he said, "This one. This one was there." So they hauled me off in chains. And they threw me in a cell. And they didn't see daylight for days. I think they only kept me alive to maybe see if I would turn somebody else in. I think they figured if they kept me there long enough and made me miserable enough, I would turn in the other members of my group. They didn't know me very well. I wasn't going to do that. But just the same, they kept me. A couple of times they hauled me out and beat me. Got to see daylight, so that was a good thing. But they beat me. Left me half alive, and then they dragged me back. Locked a shackle around my ankle. And left me to tend to my own wounds. And the whole time I'm there in the dark, all I can think about is how it's going to end, because I know I am going to be crucified. That's what they did to rebels. That's what they did to murderers. I had seen it. I had seen too many good Jews die on a Roman cross. My father told at the time in Jerusalem when there had been an uprising and the Romans didn't have enough crosses to go around, so they nailed people to the walls and left them to die. And I had seen how people died on the cross. And I dreaded the thought. I dreaded the thought of just hanging there, open to the world, with the bugs and the birds and the animals free to bite me, with the nails through my hands and my ankles, just waiting there to die, knowing there was nothing that could be done. I dreaded it. I dreamt about it. I knew it was going to happen. And sometimes I think that they did it to me on purpose, that they just wanted me to suffer because I had killed one of their own. I don't know how long I was there, but early one morning the guards came and I thought, okay, this is it. This is it. I'm going to get crucified today. Part of me was in terror, and part of me was thinking, okay, at least it's going to be over. So with a guard on each side, they dragged me up into the courtyard. And there was Pontius Pilate up on a platform. He was sitting in what they called the judgment seat. That's the seat where the Romans would sit when they were hearing trial. And he was sitting there, and he saw me get dragged up there, up to the courtyard, and he looked over on the other side, and there was another prisoner over there, and then he stood up and he looked at the crowd and he went, "See these two men? Here's Barabbas, a rebel, a killer, a murderer, a criminal. And here's Jesus of Nazareth, the one you call the Messiah. He teaches peace and love. He talks about God. He talks about helping your neighbor. So I'm going to do you a favor. This is the holiday. I'm going to free one of these two men and the other one's going to die. So which one should I free?" And I knew I was dead at that point because I wasn't exactly loved by anybody. Not even the temple authorities, because they just saw me as a nuisance. All of us rebels were not popular because we would stir the Romans up and then the pressure would be put on the priests. And it just wasn't good for business. So when he offered them that choice, I knew I was dead. I figured he was just toying with me at that point. And then all of a sudden, the crowd starts chanting my name. "Give us Barabbas." They seemed to love me. And I couldn't understand it. I thought I was having one of those dreams again, one of those hallucinations. And they just kept chanting, "Give us Barabbas." And I stared and I looked at the crowd, and all of a sudden I could see different men that I knew were priests standing in front of the crowd, kind of whooping them up, getting them to chant my name. And I knew that there was something very strange going on. And Pilate had to know it. He was looking. He had to see what was going on, but he didn't say anything. He just stood there for a minute. looked astounded, I guess, that they would say that. He looked beyond shocked. And he looked at Jesus, and I almost think I could see pity. But then he looked to the crowd again, and he told them he was going to set me free. And the guards dragged me away from the courtyard. But set free or not, I still got a beating. After all, I had killed Roman soldiers. I had killed soldiers that were friends of theirs. They would not go against the judgment of the procurator, Pilate. They had to let me free. They didn't have to let me free without a good beating. They knew they hated me, and they let me know how much they hated me. Finally, when the beating was done, they dragged me out of the fortress and they dumped me in the street. And as I sat there, trying to decide if anything was broken, as I sat there, I saw the gate open up and the detail come out, the one that was going up to Golgotha. The detail traveled in three little squares, one around each prisoner. The prisoner in front was some guy I had never seen, and the prisoner in back was some guy I had never seen, but the one in the middle was Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus the Messiah, this guy that Pilate had tried to trade for me. He was carrying the crosspiece. He could barely stand up, but he was kind of standing there wavering as they formed up around him. And then finally, the officer on the horse gave the order, and they started to march. Long march outside the city walls to Golgotha. And before he took his first step, Jesus looked at me. And I think I saw satisfaction. I think I saw satisfaction in his eyes, or something very much like it. And I stood there and I was confused, and as he came by, as he drew closest to me, I swear I heard him say, "You will live, because I die. Sin no more." That's what I think I heard, and I just didn't get it. I didn't get it. So I just went on living how I lived. A few more Romans were not going home because of me. But I was never caught again. And then one day I was in the temple hiding out. And one of the priests was reading from the scrolls. He was reading from Numbers, and he was reading about the Day of Atonement and about scapegoats. And he read about how 2 goats would be selected and brought to the tabernacle. And lots would be chosen, and 1 goat would be chosen for the Lord. And that one would be sacrificed. And 1 goat would be allowed to live and would be set free in the wilderness. And all of a sudden I realized which one I was. I realized which goat I was, and I realized that Jesus was the goat that had been chosen to die for the sins of the people. Now, I heard his disciples in the years after that. I heard his disciples say, honestly, they're all crazy. But I heard them say that Jesus came to die for us. I heard them say that our sins were laid on him and that he was offered up to the Lord for us. And I realized that all of us are the goats who were set free. That one could die for us. We are, each of us, released to wander this world again, and Jesus is offered up in our stead. And it makes me wonder, what did I ever do to deserve this? And the only answer I can ever come up with is nothing. I've done nothing to deserve this. So the only question I have left is, what can I do to make this worthwhile? What can I do to make my new life count for something?